Hello and welcome to today's weather and wellness update for June 9th, 2025. It's been a while since I made the last video because the last week's weather really just floored me. I got a headache. I got this extreme fatigue. We talked about it in the last video that there was a lot of strong solar activity and also there was a big barometric pressure drop coming to London. Well, all of my best intentions didn't quite work out. The good news is that we have this amazing intelligence in our body that we will eventually come back to balance. So, getting there slowly but surely. I'm looking forward to some high pressure coming through this week, and the sun situation has calmed down a little bit. We do have the moon coming in with some activity this week, so we're going to talk about all of that and more. So thanks for tuning in. Hi, I'm Sheila O'Connor. I'm a health coach and educator, and on this channel, we look at how the weather in the atmosphere from day to day can affect our health and wellness, and how we can use that information to make our diet and lifestyle choices as we go through the whole week. Some foods work better with some weather, and some lifestyle behaviors also support different weather patterns a little bit differently. A very simple example of that would be when it's super hot, you want to stay hydrated and you probably don't want to do very intense activity in the middle of the day. So that's a really simple and easy example. And then we're going to get into some of the nuances of that. Today, we're going to look at London and a couple of other places. I always start with London because I live in London. And then I try to look at a couple other places with the idea being that you can learn something here and then apply it to wherever you are in the world. And that's why I try to look at different places. Some of the things are very local and micro weather patterns. And then other things are happening to everybody in the whole world, which would be especially the sun and the moon. So we try to look at a little bit of both of that. The study or the idea of looking at weather and health is called biometeorology, and it looks at health on ourselves and other living creatures. So we try to bring that in. I'm not a meteorologist or an expert on any of this stuff. I get the data, I apply it to the health and wellness stuff that I understand about how the body is working and how our systems interact. And so that's what we're going to talk about here. So let's get started. It's estimated that about 30% of the population are sensitive to the weather, so in all the atmosphere. So I consider myself within one of those 30%. It's a spectrum. Some people really don't seem to be fazed by it much at all, but the chances are you probably know somebody who is affected. So why not learn a little bit about it? You might be living with somebody who is affected by different kinds of weather. So it's kind of interesting to look at. So let's go ahead and get started with today. And I'm going to share my screen. Let's get that going here. Mhm. Here we go. I always, so we're going to look at some different kinds of, we look at some different pages, then we sort of put it all together and see what we come up with for a general idea of what to expect this week. So here is the weather forecast for London. I like to look at the biometeorology. It looks like things are calming down a little bit. There's a little bit of UV going on, but generally last week we were at a 4 all week in every location generally. And then you see tomorrow we have this new thing coming in right here, and that is influences from the phases of the moon. Now, this says insomniacs may be affected by the full moon, resulting in tiredness. So we're going to talk about the full moon, and it does affect sleep. It can affect anyone, not just insomniacs. That's a pretty dramatic way of saying it. Let's have a look at the UV index here. And also, I want to look at this because we're going to compare it to some UV. So today's was pretty calm. We're going to be a 5 tomorrow out of 11. And then the next day, we're going to move it to a 7. So we are having an increasing radiation throughout the week in London. So, and then if it's getting up to 8, 10, and 11, there's the little scale right there. And okay, let's move on. Like, we're just going to go through a general um, look at a few places and a few data points, and then we'll just see what it all means. Here we have Oklahoma City. We've been talking about Oklahoma City, just a nice place in the middle. Everyone, this is the biometeorology weather. Their radiation is much higher, even though their number here is the same. So it's good to look at all the different details. Again, tomorrow we have the moon phase coming in right here. That's going to be something that everybody is going to be focusing on. The day after tomorrow, the 11th of June, is our full moon. And usually it's 1 or 2 days before and 1 or 2 days after that some people notice the effects of that. Here is the UV index in Oklahoma City. It's quite high, and you can see when the sun is out during the day. I know their weather is changing all the time, and it's a little less tomorrow. Can just project forward a little bit. And then I think they're going to get some, that's about as far as this one goes. So that is Oklahoma City. And then let's move on. We have one more to look at, San Francisco. Oh, near and dear to my heart. I lived there for 20 years. We have, it's quite similar. All these places are pretty similar. The UV index, it's pretty high. So it looks like in the central and western part of the US, the UV index is quite high at the moment. So take those precautions with that. Let's move on to the next one. Now we're going to look at the barometric pressure. And this one's pretty interesting because this is for London. I really like this website. I look at this one a lot, and I have my, let's see if I can expand this. I have my little barometer here, and my barometer is moving up, which I'm very happy to see. So we'll just put that back here. And yeah, it's good to have, keep you reminded that the weather is a factor. So normally, like, this is like a 3 day, so you can see we're coming from this low point starting yesterday. What time was that? Yeah, Saturday night around midnight, 1 a.m. We started moving into a lighter pressure, and it was nice. It rained quite a bit Saturday, but then this is really interesting because, like I said, I was super tired and I had headaches and I was just pretty floored. I just was doing the basics last week. If you look at this 7 day kind of graph here, make sure we get the legend in there. You can see we started off over here, we moved into the low pressure, and I think these days were when everyone in my household was feeling like the energy was seriously dropping, and we just didn't get a boost to recover. So it was kind of, even though we were cooking all the right foods, doing all the right things, just the combination of everything was a lot. It just kind of stuck around for a long time, and then it's moving up, and uh, yeah, here we are right now. We can see it's going to be a nice week in the normal zone, and we can look forward to some high pressure by the end of the weekend. So that is very good for London. So we get a little break from that week. Last week, I just think it was that energy where no matter, it just couldn't quite muster up enough energy to do things. And I don't know, I was kind of walking around like in my mode. Okay, let's keep going here. I have these kind of set up. Here is London. Let me see if I can move this over. Okay, I'm gonna, yeah. Let's stretch this one out again. Okay, so this one is kind of nice because it just gives you a little bit of an overview. So there are some grass pollens that are high. And if you go to different weather channels, you can kind of click around and see what information you can get. If you suffer from allergies, you probably already are looking at this. So grass pollens are high. You can see tree pollens, not so much. So you can have a look at that when you see, this giving you a little warning. I like to look at the 10-day forecast here. Um, so here, let's see. Here's the 10-day forecast. Um, I'm going to look in this section right here. Well, that's showing the wind in different places. The wind is a big factor here in England. So looks like we're going to get a pretty calm week with the wind mostly under 10 miles per hour, just over. So that's quite good. It's going to be warm, partly cloudy, mostly sunny. We already saw the barometric pressure, so things are looking pretty good over here for the next week. So that's kind of fun. Let's look at the next one we have here. Oklahoma City. Again, let's see, where was that? If we go to today, where, yeah, it's good to look at the day and then also look at um, the forecast ahead. So you can just sort of see where you're at and where things are going. I'm going to see if I can change this to Fahrenheit. I don't know. It's funny how things make sense. There we go. Voila. Let's stretch that out. Also, some grass pollen, not quite as bad. The UV index here, 9 out of 11, right there in the middle of the day. The pressure's dropping. And then, yeah, so you can look ahead and see what's going on. So the hourly forecast looks like there's some thunderstorms coming after some sunshine. So that's that's what's happening over there. So you can look at all the different pieces. And finally, I just want to bring this up because this is the data from NOAA that we looked at last week. And last week we were in a big solar storm. And I like this website because it just shows you some really good bases. See down here, the solar wind speed is 484 kilometers per second, which sounds pretty high, but that's usually just pretty normal and pretty kind of calm. Last week, we were up around 1,000 when it was just blasting out from the sun. And you can also see here the aurora forecast is really pretty minimal, not a lot going on. Very minimal probability of auroras in the very, very northern area. And then this graph here, remember we looked at this one last week. It was here. We were in a red last week, and then we kind of throughout the week we moved down, and now we're back into a green. And I saw in one graph of this, we were even down to a blue, which was really, really calm. So that's kind of where we're at with the sun. So that's good. Things are calmed down for now. Again, that could change at any time because we're at the end of the solar, we're at the end of the peak of the current solar cycle. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the share. All right, here we are. So the main idea of what's going on right now is paying attention to the UV index and also the full moon is coming up. Now, it did highlight the insomnia with the full moon. I did notice that I tended to get a little bit of sleep disruption at certain times of my life during the full moon. The reason that that happens is because it's bringing more light into the sky, so it's actually interrupting the melatonin that you get when the sun goes down. So we get cortisol in the morning when the sun comes up. Ideally, in a balanced hormone situation, we're getting cortisol in the morning, which is basically fueling us to get through the day. And then we're getting, as the sun cycle changes, and you'll get more influence of this when you spend time outside, is the sun goes down, and then the melatonin, that is a trigger for melatonin to produce. Now, melatonin is very, very important for the immune system. So if we don't get the melatonin, we're not getting the cellular repair that's happening during the night when we sleep. So if the sleep is disrupted and we're not getting the melatonin, then it potentially could cause a drop in our immune system. So that's important to take note of. I think that one of the things that happens is when you do have a dysregulation of some sort or some imbalance, the full moon can come in and maybe enhance that or highlight that a little bit more. That is one possibility. It's not really known. Again, about 30% of the population has these sensitivities. And maybe at certain times, one person may be more sensitive than others, depending on fatigue, stress, all kinds of different things that can be happening. So related to sleep, I'm just gonna we want the melatonin to kick in. And that's true always. It's not only true with the full moon. So, one of the things that happens that can disrupt sleep, and if you have sleep disruptions often, what can be related to that is too much blue light in the evening. And so what happens is the sun that comes up has a blue light, um, gosh, what would be the right word? It's considered blue light. It's got more blue in the spectrum. And then later at night when the sun sets, it has more red and orange in the spectrum. And those colors are related to the hormone cues that they're giving to the body. So one thing you can do, and I've had these for a really long time, and I've gone through different periods. When I was really, really working on my sleep, I would wear these really cute glasses around the house. They fit over your normal glasses, but what they do is they block the blue light. So if you need to do some work on a computer or you're watching TV, late at night, you may consider using something like this the last couple hours before you go to sleep. And it really does work. It's kind of interesting. Like, I'm gonna take them off now. Like you get, it does, it does start bringing down your cortisol and triggering you into a more phase of sleep. So that's one thing. Make sure your bedroom is really dark. I also found that the more I had a really good sleep routine, the less the effects of the full moon would become prominent in terms of getting enough sleep. The other big thing with the full moon is behavior and mood. That can also affect people, which it could just be because there's not enough sleep and there's not enough melatonin for that cellular repair. Nobody really knows. But given that there's a full moon right in the middle of the week, I would say, you know, any stuff that's going on, just remember everybody might not be getting enough sleep this week. So it's always good. You don't know what's going on, and that can affect mood. So that's the biggest thing to watch out for this week. I'm going to just check my notes. So stay well, have a look at your sleep, and if you know something helps, this is a really good week to do a little extra practice with that. Take care for the UV, stay away from processed foods and a lot of sugar on those high UV days because they can make you even more sensitive to the sun's rays. So thanks for tuning in today and be well, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.